Appreciate your testimony. We will move on to questions, and I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes. Deeply appreciate your willingness to come and testify in front of the committee and share some of these examples and stories with us. I know you have quite a few folks that you've spoken to that have been deeply affected by this, and from our position on this committee, to the extent that we offer an apology for that, I want it to be heartfelt and sincere that we want to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and we want to work with you on that. I'm committed to working with the VA to re-engage that periodic, outreach to our VSOs so that there is a flow of information back and forth where they can hear from you and you can hear from them and vice versa. Also, I begun to think about potential policy changes that might be effective in helping to ease this, one of which was the certificate of eligibility. Instead of waiting until a student is about to enroll in college, which might be 10 or more years after they would become eligible due to the death of a parent or family member, why not furnish the certificate of eligibility upon the time that they're eligible? That way it's one less step in the process later on and trying to accumulate military records from 10 or 15 or more years prior to that, for example. So that is something that we're going to look at. I know that there was concerns of students that may have been dismissed from school because enough time had gone on. I think there's a 90-day window that they cannot take action against a student, and some of that may have, unfortunately gone beyond that threshold. Do you know of any institution that, that removed from enrollment a student that fell into this circumstance of not having payment authorized?
We heard of quite a few schools that threatened to do so. Our casework team is phenomenal and reached out directly to the schools, provided them with the law, provided them with all of the publicly available information, which is very little from VA, but really tried to work with them, as well as we work with a lot of private scholarship organizations to try and make sure that there was enough of a payment made for those students if the school was truly threatening that, to make sure that they weren't going to be the stress and anxiety of that was something that was incredibly difficult.
So no schools that we know of and that you have heard of disenrolled or unenrolled a student during this. Not that that defends the delay, but we want to make sure that there aren't any schools that actually followed through on that, to the best of your knowledge.
Not that we know of, because we made sure those, working with other organizations to make sure those payments were at least made to prevent that from happening.
Okay, thank you. And then do you know how many of the students within the TAPS program were affected by this specific delay?
We heard from several dozen cases that were true hardship, which we worked directly with your staff to establish. We heard from even larger numbers, more in the hundreds, potentially thousands, that were delayed, but didn't consider themselves true hardships, especially if they had other scholarships and things that were helping supplement at least the tuition piece.
Okay. And then we've heard that the Chapter 35 backlog has essentially been extinguished. Have you heard from any of your members that does not substantiate that claim?
Not at this time. Every case that we sent forward was paid fairly quickly, and we have not heard from anyone that they still have outstanding payments. As
of the last few weeks or so?
Correct.
Okay. And what, I guess you may have mentioned this in your testimony in an earlier question, but do you have any regular contact with the VA through your organization, or is that really just sort of halted?
Normally we do. We actually have a memorandum of understanding with the VA, and we've worked closely with Education Services in the past. The stakeholder meeting that I mentioned was held monthly for many years, but the last VA stakeholder meeting occurred in December of 2024. We were told in January that they were moving them to quarterly. And then the first 2 quarterly ones were canceled, and then everything has been removed from the calendar since.
Okay. And then have you heard for the upcoming semester, the January enrollment, obviously there are going to be individuals applying for either continuation of benefits or for new benefits that they would be enrolling in. Have you heard of any lengthy delays beyond, maybe a couple of weeks or so for these claims to get processed?
Not that we're aware of, but we also have not been briefed, and to my knowledge, schools have not been briefed on any possible delays or things that schools can be doing to better support students if there is a delay.
Okay, but you haven't heard from either schools or beneficiaries that you're affiliated with that have had lengthy delays? For the January semester?
We generally wouldn't know until a payment doesn't arrive. So
Okay,
because
so
the way
end of
VA
January.
pays, we wouldn't even generally know until February because VA pays in the rears. So
Okay.
January payments wouldn't arrive until February 1st.
Okay,